Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to May 14th, 2018. We're not drawing mermaids today, but today is the KNKL Show, episode 369, where we learn to be better artists. My name is Kienan Lafferty, and I would like to welcome you to a show on creating stylized armor. Let's go ahead and jump into it. We're all about efficiency here, because today we're going to be featuring Dark Souls in honor of the upcoming remaster. Hopefully it turns out good. I know there's a couple, there's kind of swaying opinions about whether it's going to be good or not, but I believe that it will be awesome. And I'm excited for it. So we're going to be drawing Ornstein or Ornstein today, however you like to pronounce it. And we're going to be talking about terminology. We're going to be doing a little bit of a study session. We're going to be talking about all the terminology that goes into creating armor. We're going to be translating it over to a stylized piece and then putting an additional layer of frosting on top of it that I like to call beveling, something that is very prominent and trendy in today's concept art. We're going to make it even more stylized, a little bit more cartoony, something you might see in one of today's games. So let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing we do before we even think about creating a piece of armor is we have to create a body to put it on. So let's go ahead and get into that. And I wasn't planning on this being a body tutorial, but for the heck of it, I'm going to be drawing this live for you guys. So let's go ahead and draw a body. Usually what I like to do is I start with a head, and then the first thing that I'm always keeping in mind is a line of action, a gesture line that will help to create some semblance of flow in my piece, okay? So let's go ahead and just draw in the body here, okay? Here's how I like to draw male bodies. I like to think of them, sort of like an hourglass figure. However, I like to create these broader shoulders at the top. And then how I create the hips and the crotch region is I do this, right? You have this sort of shape, and then look at that. Oh my gosh, the legs fit right into there. Isn't that awesome? Perfect. Actually, those hips are a little bit too big. You want to make them a little bit smaller. But hey, you're going to see me make a ton of mistakes because guess what? We're doing this all live today, so you can watch me make all these mistakes. And you can say, wow, Keenan, even as a professional, you still make bodies that look like crap. And that is, of course, yes, that is true. I draw very, very rough, and I make all sorts of mistakes at the beginning, okay? So feel free to follow along. I hope you're drawing along with me. I hope you're making mistakes with me, and I hope that you're pushing on along with me. So let's see. I want to make sure that this has a really nice silhouette because I want all of the armor pieces to be showing on this character. So let's make sure that we don't have a lot of overlapping. Notice how I don't take this arm, and I'm not placing it in front of the character. That looks okay, but the reason why is because we have this other arm out like this. Imagine if we had this other arm in like this, like he was holding the spear. So let's say one hand was here, the other hand was here, and he's holding the spear like that. I don't know why you would ever hold a spear like that, but it's also not doing any favors for our silhouette. So let's go ahead and make sure that we kick out one of those arms. The other reason why I don't want this arm to be in the way is because I want to draw his breastplate, and I want to make sure that all of those details are going to come through. So today, it's less focusing on the pose, more so on a good silhouette. Yes. Okay, so the spear will be right there. That looks pretty cool. I do want to modify this pose to have a little bit more stylization to it because I want to make it, it's not going to be so much chibi, but it will be stylized. So let's make sure that we kind of play around with our proportions a little bit more. And I want this to be a little bit more 3D. I want this pose to have a little bit more 3D space. So what I'm going to do is in my mind, I'm going to turn this figure. I'm going to turn it in 3D space. And it's actually a lot easier than you might think. All you have to do is see how this leg feels like it's coming forward if we were to draw those ellipses on there? See how it feels like it's coming towards us? What we're going to do now is we're just going to make sure that those ellipses feel like they're going a little bit more backwards. We're going to make those ellipses go more towards the background, okay? We might have something more like this. And then this leg, let's kick this leg so it's more coming towards us, like this. And then as you do this, you're going to run into a problem that I always face. And that is, how do you get the feet on the ground and make it look like this character is not going to fall over? Because that's exactly what it looks like is about to happen. See, if I were to draw in this foot right here, see, there's no semblance of balance. This character is just going to fall back on his backside, and that is not okay. But luckily, we can fix that with the amazing sketchiness that our character is in. Another reason why I like to work very rough is because sketches are very easy to change. And yeah, it'll be a fun time. So let's go ahead and just get this neck back in there, get that head more like this. I want this arm to have more of a flow like this. I want it to feel more like this happening. So see how it's like straight? I want it to have a little bit more feeling to it. Once again with feeling. So let's go ahead and kick that arm out like that and kind of bring it back in like this. Yeah, that feels a lot cooler. That feels a lot cooler. And then that spear can come down. Ornstein spear can be right there. Love it. Love it. Another thing that really helps me to think in 3D space is I like to draw subdivision lines. So let's say we have this torso here. Ask yourself, where is the subdivision of that? Where is the middle point? Sometimes drawing a little bit of anatomy also helps. So here would represent like our chest muscles. And then coming down, we'd have the abs. But again, we don't need to worry too much about that because we're going to be overlaying it with armor. We just have to have the general volume in there, okay? Now let's see. I'm going to hide this arm. Another really cool trick is just hide the arm behind the chest. It also helps to create that 3D space we were talking about. And I'm not going to worry too much about the hand or the fist, okay? But going back to what we were talking about earlier, getting the feet on the ground so that way the character feels like they are balanced. Okay, so what you want to do here is notice how we have created a plane. Oh, this is a really good way to say it. I just thought of this. So imagine the character is like sitting on top of this like trophy stand. Imagine there was like a trophy stand, like a cylindrical base that the character needs to sit on. Now, if one foot is placed here, right, this is the balance point. Another way that really helps to do this is figure out where the most amount of weight is and then draw a line down from that. So, of course, our weight and the back of our head going down through the spine, going down through the torso would put us about right here, like right at the center point of our base. So if we have one area of balance happening here, where would the other foot have to be in order to balance this? Well, you can say, okay, well, let's keep it straight in line with our biggest center of mass, our biggest weight of mass. And that means that the other foot is probably going to have to be around here or somewhere on this line. Somewhere on this line. See, before it was like way the heck out here. That's not going to work. That character can't stand up properly. But if we put it back there somewhere, it will work. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm just going to leave those construction lines in there because we're sketching. And what I'm going to do is, this is a good way to segue into a new thing that I've been wanting to teach you guys, and that is how do you create cleaner line art. Cleaner line art, and why you should never be afraid of working in a very sketchy tone like this at the beginning, because you can always figure things out later. And I've actually talked about sketch refining and sketch lifting before, which is basically like keep this fidelity and then go in there and start like kind of carving things away. And I've actually started to shy away from this a little bit, mostly because I've been jealous about all the people that I see on these other art websites that have such clean line art. And I'm like, no, my line art can look like that, but I have to spend hours. And it's because the reason why I just refine my sketches and I kind of erase things and sculpt things into place is because I'm always afraid of losing my character. I'm afraid of losing little gesture lines. And I'm sure many of you have dealt with this before. You'll be cleaning up a sketch and then you'll be like, all right, I just got my clean line art done. And then you look at the face and it looks stiff and like the emotion and the line of action is gone. A lot of your original things that you liked about your sketch they are mere shells of what they once were. And it's very sad. It's very sad to see. I see it all the time in my artwork. And I guess I've just been traumatized by it so many times that I just said, all right, I'm not going to make a new sketch. I'm not going to make new line art. I'm just going to keep that original sketch. Speaking of cheating things, I'm just going to grab these hips. Look, this is another thing that I do, ladies and gentlemen. You think I'm a good artist and I just redraw things? Heck no. I move things up. I grab, lasso. I do whatever it takes to get things done. To get things done. Wait, why is it doing that? Oh yeah, but what was I saying? Oh yeah, we're going to be talking about cleaner line art today. Ah, isn't that nice? That is really nice. Okay, so now we have a body that is going to fit our Ornstein's armor on top of. And see, look at that foot. See, now that we have that, our character looks like they're actually balanced. So I'd highly recommend doing that. Draw the base, figure out kind of what perspective you're working in. It won't always be top down. Sometimes the ellipse will be more like this, and it'll be a little bit... The biggest thing that I've noticed is that the thinner this ellipse gets, the more you can cheat it. The thinner this ellipse gets, the more you can cheat it, because if it's this thin, right? If it's this thin, then 1 foot could be here, 1 foot could be there, right? And it's like there's less kind of feeling for it to fall over. But when you're looking down on it like this, you can really see where everything is. You can see all the perspective lines. You can see where the mass of this body would have to be balanced. That's when it's really important to draw that base, okay? So I hope that helps you guys out. Let's go ahead and move into clean line art, and let's talk about all this terminology over here, and let's begin translating it over to our body. Here's where we're going to make an awesome Ornstein today. This pose here, actually, there's some things about this pose that I like. Maybe we'll kind of translate that over as we're working with our line art here. Because I do look at this, and there is a little bit of stiffness to it still. In fact, how long do we want to go on this? I'm a fan of longer tutorials nowadays. I'm a fan of like full, showing the full process. Let's go ahead and do uno más. So, as I've said before, whenever I'm about to make changes to a layer, I just hit Control J. And that just allows me to, I've just duplicated my layer. And if I make a terrible mistake and I mess it all up, if I muck it all up, then I can just go back and it'll be much easier. So the thing that I want to change with this is I'm looking up here, and this is what I'm talking about, guys. Like keeping your original sketches, there's something about the way that this neck, do you see how that neck just really follows that line, and it has that really cool, it reinforces that gesture line that we had before. And I feel like we're losing that ever so slightly with this new one. In fact, I think that's what it is. I think it's just the neck that has to change. So let's go ahead and get in there and modify that neck just a little bit more. Let's modify the head and the neck to be sticking up just a little bit more and get a little bit more of that. If I couldn't say that anymore, get a little bit more of that gesture in there. Okay. So let's see. Maybe maybe something more like that. Get a little bit more of the neck going. And because of that, do you see what's happening? We have more of the neck showing. And because of this, I want to move the arm or the shoulder back a tad bit more. There we go. I figured out another way to say that phrase. You probably have no idea what I'm talking about, but the inner monologue of when I say too many phrases over and over again, I've gotten good at catching that. I've gotten a lot better at catching that. So I try to, a good thing about speaking is learning to say the same thing in a different way over and over again. Okay, but because we've moved the shoulder and the neck back, we're losing a little bit of our balance. We need a little bit more balance, people. So what are we going to do? We're going to grab this leg and look, lasso it. I'm going to control click this little movement piece right here. I'm going to move that. Let's move and shift our weight a little bit more towards the back. There we go. See? Look at that. Look at that. See? Now we have, compare these two. Do you see how there's much more gesture? You see that line going right through there? That's the kind of stuff we like to work with. That's the kind of stuff we like to see. And that feels way better. All right, now I'm much more confident with working with that. Okay, so enough blabbing. Let's lower down the opacity and begin sketching some armor. I know why you guys all showed up. Let's get to it. Whoa, that's way too big. Way too big. There we go. Okay, that looks good. Digging that. All right, so let's go ahead and lower down that opacity. And now we have a great mannequin to work off of. Done and balanced. And let's go ahead and get into this armor. Okay, so armor is really, really cool, ladies and gentlemen. It's one of my favorite things in the world. And it actually puzzled me for the longest time how to draw armor and have it look proper. And the reason why I got so confused about it is because I said, oh, okay, well, armor is plating. So in order to just create armor, well, let's just start creating plates. And you know what I think of? Okay, well, let's like have a plate here, and then there'll be like a plate there and a plate there. And actually, this isn't too far off from what it actually is. But see how like we're just using one shape. We're just using kind of like this turned half cylinder. Let's put a half cylinder on his neck. Put a half cylinder on his body. And actually, it's very interesting because what I'm drawing here, the shapes are all technically there. That's where they exist. That's where the metal pieces would go. But even before that, I tried to get like fancy with it. And I'd be like, okay, well, let's design a really cool custom breastplate. So what I would do is I would be like, okay, well, let's have like a box here and like a box there. And then let's have one for every single ab. And then like that and like that. And then the worst case of all, is I would just draw stuff that couldn't even possibly work. As I'd say, oh, let's have like this big metal piece that comes down like this, right? For whatever reason. But then do you see how these legs, like you need to have cutaways there. You need to be able to have places of articulation. And that's one of the main points that I want to talk to you guys about today is like keeping in mind articulation. How much can this character move? We want to be able to have them raise their arms. They don't need to raise them all the way up like this, but they need to be able to at least raise them to kind of a T-pose. See, even our good friend Ornstein over here, he can get his arms up. So let's go ahead and keep that in mind. And let's start with the breastplate, because I think that everything kind of builds off of that, builds out of that. And I'll keep that there for everybody who wants to download my awesome plate design at the end. So let's go ahead and get into that. So let's delete that. Let's start with the breastplate. So the main parts of the breastplate, as you can see over here. Oh yeah, by the way, all of these terms, of course, this courtesy of google.com, I loved this beautiful diagram of how to separate out the different pieces of armor. I've circled the ones in blue that I personally like to think of the most, right? However, there are some smaller bits, like the bottom of this chest plate or the breastplate is called the placard, and then the little plates that go down towards the tasset are called the fold. But, however, those are not super important that you know. However, all these ones that I've circled in blue, we will be referring to today, and are personally the ones that I like to keep in my mental toolbox, my vocabulary toolbox, so I can sound extra smart at work. Okay, and you deserve to do the same. So let's go ahead and do that. Actually, I don't memorize all of these words, but I do remember this one. This specifically this one called the couture. This one, the elbow. This goes on the elbow. We'll get to that in just a second, but that's one of my favorite. It's one of my favorite words. The couture. I used to call it the couture to try to sound more more distinguished, but that's not how you pronounce it at all. Okay, so let's go ahead and get into this. Yes, the breastplate. So Ornstein's breastplate is really cool because it has this sort of design that comes down like this. And by the way, I remember we were talking about bevels. We're going to get into bevels in just a moment because I want to first show you the way that I learned to draw armor. And that is thinking of everything as paper thin. Think of your plates as paper thin. So just get the designs in there first, okay? Get the main designs in there. And for Ornstein, he has a breastplate that goes like this, okay? So this is our breastplate. And then it's going to go up towards our neck armor, which is called the gorget, okay? And that is going to lay on top of the breastplate, okay? And that is going to move up like this. Keep in mind, how do you turn your neck? Is this going to have multiple pieces? It looks like it's fairly unclear here how it's working on Ornstein. And actually, a lot of it is overlaid by his helm. His helm actually overlays a lot of his neck armor, so don't need to worry too much about that. In fact, in this case, I would say let's keep it fairly simple. Let's say that the gorget had a shape like this. Just enough to get that head in there. We can make it a little bit wider too. When in doubt, just give it plenty of room. Give your character plenty of room to be able to articulate and move their head around inside of their armor. Okay, so that's looking good. Oh, another thing. Speaking of clean line art, I have started moving over to using just the regular hard brush when I'm going into trying to make clean lines. However, this is debatable whether it's really important or not. However, I really like the look of not having a lot of texture in this phase. I find that texture is really good in the sketching phase. However, when you're starting to try to clean things up, I find that using things like the hard round brush look very nice. Okay, so we can see here, isn't that awesome? On the inside, I'm going to have a separate color that way I can get in there. So a big thing, speaking of articulation, always pay attention to where the opening of the breastplate is. You can see it's right here on Ornstein. Let's go ahead and put that in on our character. Okay, so that opening of the breastplate is going to be right there. And that gives us plenty of room for our arms to move around. Boom, easy. Okay, now let's move on to the pauldrons. Pauldrons, which is going to be right there. Pauldrons are the pieces of armor that go over your shoulders. And Ornstein's look freaking tight. I love Ornstein's pauldrons. Look at these things. Look at how awesome those are. Wow. really, really cool. And I like this piece specifically because it shows how it would articulate and move up if he were to raise his arm. And it's fairly, I mean, it's still fairly up in the air with like that sketch and everything. So we can kind of play around and make these pauldrons ourselves. So the main thing that you want to do as you create these pauldrons is think about the outer shape first, okay? So it comes to this point right here, right? And then it kind of comes up like this. And then it looks like there's a piece right here that comes up and it's going to overlay like this, okay? And then as you do this, ladies and gentlemen, just go ahead and erase away. Go ahead and erase away the pieces of armor that lay behind it. And then you can see here, there's layering. There's layering to these pieces. However, before we start worrying about bevels and like super depth, remember, keep things simple. Keep things as paper thin as possible. Just get those lines in there. Just get those lines in there. So something like this. However, I keep saying the word bevel, and you guys might not even know what I'm talking about. Let me show you guys what I'm talking about. So you can see here we have our pauldron. I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this. I'm going to show you a quick treatment on this, and then we're going to do it to the entire armor set at the end. So see how we have this shoulder guard or this neck guard piece of this pauldron. See how this comes up? And see how when you just draw one line, it looks like it's like paper thin. It's like, how does this work? If I was to draw, you know, like lines on this to represent this in a 3D state, you know, I might want to draw something like this. But do you see how there's this point of, you know, you want to show the depth that's happening. So you kind of do this. Well, inlaying another line can help to show depth. Okay, so let's take away all those lines that we just drew and let's begin drawing a bevel. The bevel is just as easy as drawing another line like this. See, once I draw this bevel, do you see how now that armor feels like it goes in like that, and then it comes down like that? And bevel lines are probably one of the most important things that I can recommend to you when you're drawing things in a 3D space. You can even draw a bevel on the other side too. See how just drawing a thin line like this allows that armor to now take on new form. See how now that feels like it has depth to it. It's really, really awesome, and that's what we're going to be doing to the entire armor set at the end. And we're going to be giving it that proper depth and a stylized look. Now, you can make it like super beveled and super thick, and that would look like something like Garen's armor from League of Legends, or something in like a mobile game. I don't know. But I personally really like that type of stuff. And you can always have, it doesn't always have to be super thick, unbearable bevels, like to the point where this armor would weigh like 300 pounds and there would be no physical way for this person to move in it. But you can also have thin bevels and realistic bevels. So that's what I'm talking about. That's what we're going to be getting into at the end of this. But for now, we're just focusing on our shapes. So let's go ahead and move into the helm because Ornstein has this awesome helm. I'm going to go ahead and Control J this. And let's go ahead and put on this helm. So as I said before, the thing that I like about the helm is that we need to keep in mind that the head is turned so much. We need to think about how that would actually be able to happen, because looking at this helm here, we need to think about like how many pieces of metal would kind of collide with each other as you turned your head. This is a common puzzle that I try to figure out. And Dark Souls, you might be thinking, well, how do they do it in Dark Souls? In Dark Souls, a lot of their armor animations are not realistic because they have deformations happening. A lot of the 3D meshes, it will actually like turn and deform in a way that metal never could. So, which there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it's good to have good looking armor. However, if you want it to be more realistic, ideally when you're designing armor, always be thinking about ways that you can create pieces of metal that can move together. So as little cheating is necessary. It always helps. It always helps. So looking at this armor, speaking of cheating, I always ask myself, where is Ornstein looking out from? Where are his eyes able to look out from? And I say it might be something right around here. Maybe there was a hole in where this dragon's armor was. Or this, is it a lion or is it a dragon? I'm actually not sure. Lion dragon. Whatever. I imagine the holes for the eyes would be right around here, because if you imagine Ornstein's head inside of this piece of armor, that's about where his eye line would be. So that's what I'm thinking of as we go into this. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw the helm. Let's draw the helm. There we go. There's our piece of wordplay, wordage, vocabulary. You know what I'm saying. Let's go ahead and draw that helm. Okay, so the thing I like about this helm is we need to think about, okay, if it was turning this point, right, this point down here, that's going to turn a little bit with our character, okay? So I imagine maybe this has multiple plates that would allow it to turn in space. So we might end up seeing something like this. And I'm probably going to I'm going to exaggerate this as much as possible, but we also need to keep in mind our clarity of our silhouette. We don't want to lose the clarity of our silhouette. So let's see, the general shape of this armor looks something like this, and then it's got this piece coming out like that. And I'm really trying my best to not, just for the silhouette's sake, I'm trying not to let these parts overlap as much. In fact, if we need extra space for the helm, because here's what I'm trying to avoid. I'm trying to avoid this piece like overlapping the helm, and then we kind of have this kind of thing going on in here. Actually, I guess that doesn't look terrible. Okay, yeah, never mind. I don't know what I'm talking about. That doesn't look bad. Doesn't look bad at all. But even in this concept art, it's kind of facing kind of downwards, so maybe we should... Let's go with the original plan. So my original plan was to have it sticking down a little bit more so that we have plenty of room for Ornstein's head to show right here. Now again, subdivision lines. Where's the centerpiece? Where's the center point of Ornstein's helm? It's going to be right around there. Okay, and this is going to come back like that. Or actually... let's see, that piece went upwards. That's more like his visor there. Yeah, this is more like his visor, a piece of his visor anyway. So let's go ahead and cheat this as little as possible. Because this neck armor would be like this, come down like that. So we might see something like that. We might get a little bit of an opening right there on his neck. Tiny little bit there. But in general, that's looking pretty good. I'm digging that. Liking it. It's keeping our gesture line from the beginning. That's one of the biggest reasons why I want his head to be turned that way. All right, cool. So that's a good general start for Ornstein's helm. Let's go ahead and move on down to the fold. He does have a bit of a fold on his breastplate here. And that's just the layering of these metal plates that come down. Okay, but notice how specifically there's plenty of room here. There's plenty of room in these areas for his legs to bend. That's really, really important, right? You don't want to cut off your legs when you start running with this razor sharp armor. And then on top of this, we have the tasset. The tasset which will lay on top of his legs. Now these are crazy tassets. Crazy tassets that come down like this. And I'm going to simplify these ever so slightly. Because notice how all of these tassets, here's another common problem that I run into, is when I'm drawing tassets, I want to do this. I'll like kind of just draw shapes down like that, and they're all the same space, they're all the same size kind of. Like, don't do that. Always be thinking about small, medium, large. Remember we talked about small, medium, large. And look, they have that in play right here. They have it in play right here. Look at this. We've got this small shape, we've got this large shape, medium. Then guess what? It goes right back to these large shapes, huge large shapes. So there's plenty of variety in that design as it goes down his leg. And because of that, it looks more interesting. So let's go ahead and do that, and then follow it up with this small one. And then boom, and then I'm going to have it end right there. Now there's another challenge that we have upon us, and that is that these tassets are they're basically coming towards us. So we need to think about the ellipses, right? The ellipses are going to look like this, and we need to make sure that the tassets have that ellipse going on inside of them. Okay, so let's go ahead and erase this edge, and let's redraw those tassets coming towards us, keeping in mind those ellipses. Okay, so actually those tassets are going to look more like this. See, isn't that easy? Now it looks more like that armor is coming towards us. Lovely. Lovely. Easy. Easy peasy. Okay, now up here, this is where the pants, and it looks like there is definitely has like a male skirt going on. There's a chainmail skirt happening in here on Ornstein's armor, so let's make sure we get that in there as well. Cool. Now, with the tassets on the other side, hey, that's really handy that we have this because this is a great reference for how the tassets look. See all those ellipses? See how the curvature of the armor goes that way now that the armor is facing away from us? Let's make sure that we get that going in the same way here. Okay, so I'm going to follow with the same types of lines. I come down like that. And again, just drawing paper thin shapes, not worrying about the bevels just yet. We're going to get to bevels in a little bit. Another thing that I really like about this armor design, something that I lost in this here, is that I love how broad or how much the chest of the breastplate sticks out. Let's make sure that we don't lose that. I want to have that line. By drawing that center line, we're able to reposition the chest plate and make it stick out as much as it should. So I really like the way that it looks here. Cool. Isn't that awesome? And see, as you can see with your very own eyes, we have our Ornstein armor coming into play. Coming into play. I'm going to draw in that other pauldron. I'm going to keep it very simple, though. I'm referencing this one over here, referencing this one. It's actually in a very similar position. So ideally, that brings up a good point, is that ideally you want to have as close of a reference as possible. It's good to know how to do all this stuff on your own, guys. But honestly, whenever I'm drawing armor, whenever I'm drawing anything, I pull up as much reference as humanly possible. I'm stealing from as many possible places at once. We talked about this in stealing art, the proper way to steal art, proper way to use reference. Don't feel like you have to figure everything out on your own. In fact, most of the time, if you have the direct reference of whatever it is you're trying to draw, it's just going to look better every time. It's just always going to look better. Okay, so within here, it looks like we have a little bit of this armor here. We have the Pauldron, which is the knee armor, which is covered up quite a bit by the tassets. Or the tasset. I don't know if it's tassets. I'm sure one of you will correct me down in the comments. But I just call it tassets. Then we can have this armor here. Cool. Awesome. I'm not going to worry too much about the sabaton. Sabaton is fairly simple. These Greaves are the leg armors. Again, let's draw in that center line. Okay, so look, I was about to make a mistake and put the center line there. But do you see how if I put the center line there, that would mean that the knee is here, when actually, if we take away our drawing, see, our knee is there. So the center line needs to be coming from that knee. Another good reason to sketch your body underneath your drawing. Okay, then we know that there's a connection point here, there's a connection point there. Look at all these awesome bevels. There's a lot of bevels that are just happening within this armor. It looks really nice. Okay, cool. Does he have pointed toes? Ooh, he does. Man, this armor looks so cool. Really a big fan of armor design in Dark Souls. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the Revibrace, the Vambrace, and the Cooter, as well as the Gauntlet. Let's go ahead and draw in the Revibrace. The Revibrace looks very simple on this. A lot of it is going to... Another thing that I hope you guys are noticing is that a lot of armor has to do with many layers. There's a lot of overlap that happens within armor. And because of that, a lot of stuff just ends up getting hidden. A lot of stuff just gets hidden. Now, the Couture is really cool because you want to think about it this way. Let me draw a quick little drawing over here. So you have the elbow and you have, the hand. Should go here. Okay? Now, the way that... Look at that awesome hand. I'll just do it like this. There we go. So the way that the Couture works is that you need to think about this joint being able to move up and down. It needs to be able to swivel back and forth. So how do you create a piece of armor that allows the elbow to move and kind of come in on itself? And the way that you do that is you create a piece of armor that goes like this. Okay, so oftentimes it's going to look something like this. This is from the side. So you have one piece right here. Now see how that allows the arm to bend inwards, but it still creates, there's a plate on the outer edge of it that will protect the inner side of your arm. And then out here you have the elbow plate. So it protects the outer elbow and the inner elbow. And that is how a couture works. So now how do you draw that from 3D? Well, it's actually quite easy. Actually quite easy. All you have to do is just make sure that this inner piece is nice and thin, and then on the outer piece has a nice thick outer piece. So it's going to look something like that. And you can draw that middle line like this. Okay, and there you have the couture. Let's go ahead and move into the bracers, which are going to be overlapped almost immediately by the gauntlets. You can see that is going to happen right here. And see, look, the gauntlets are overlapping a little bit of the couture, as well as the bracer, which is literally just this tiny little bit in there. That's all of the bracer that we're going to see. So oftentimes I don't worry too much about what the bracer looks like, because it's just going to get overlapped by the gauntlet. There are some smaller gauntlets that start at the wrist too, so it is good to think about, if you want to design your bracer to be more custom. Okay, let's have that opening happening right there for the gauntlet, or the actual glove to come out. There's the gauntlet, and I'm not sure if the glove armor has a special name, but I just call it the glove. All right, so let's go ahead and draw this hand grasping our spear. Should be quite easy. There we go. Cool, no? Very good, very good. Does he have special gloves? Oh, it does look like he has special gloves. He has these little plates that come out like this. Okay, cool. So now we have a general idea of how our armor is going to look, but now we want to clean it up and we want to start adding bevels. We want to really start thinking in terms of 3D with this. So what do you do? What do you do? You're going to lower it down, the opacity, once again. Or do we have to? At this point, I don't think we really have to. I don't think we have to. We can probably get right into it. Yeah, sure. Let's get into it. Let's get right into it. So I'm going to shrink this down, however, because we need a little bit of extra room for that plume. I know how angry you guys get when you don't put the plume on Ornstein. And I'm not about to fall into that trap, okay? In fact, this might be a good place to end part 1. This might be a good place to end part 1, because as we go into bevels, I would like that to start on part 2. So, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to go ahead and end that. For now, don't worry, part 2 will be up in the same day. I will see you guys in just a moment. Until then, you guys stay put, and let's get into some bevels. See you guys soon.